Hello, and welcome to episode 90 of Driver's Seat Plug Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. We're going to be doing a little bit of a lighter episode this week. It's October, it's Halloween season, it's cider season, it's cider donut season, and this is the time of year where I have to really focus on moving infrastructure to place for 2024, both YouTube and in real life. This involves a lot of time and effort, and I try to get as much work done as I can beforehand, but sometimes things out of my control just happen and force me to push this kind of stuff back. So, between now and the end of November, there may be some leaner editions of this podcast. I'm sorry, but it's just I'm one person. And with that out of the way, let's go on to the show. So the big news story, let's get it out of the way first. On September 27th, it was announced that Kyle Busch Motorsports and something called Rowdy Manufacturing, which I didn't even know existed, was being sold to Spire Motorsports. Now, in the article on JSKI, link in the description, Kyle explained this decision. Quote, "When we started the Truck Series team back in 2010, I never imagined we would be able to win 100 races with 18 different drivers, and that one day I'd be racing in the Cup Series along so many of the drivers I once mentored at KBM. I owe a lot of gratitude to so many people, starting with Samantha and my family for believing in this dream that I had. It took countless hours by so many amazing people to make the Kyle Busch Motorsports the winningest team in Truck Series history. I will always appreciate everyone that walked through the doors and gave their all to make this such a successful organization. Not only has it been the people that were employed here, but it's also the families that supported them while they worked long hours and traveled on the weekends, sacrificing their time at home and missing family events. And I can't say enough thanks to Toyota for the first 13 years of support, and to Chevrolet for stepping up to the plate this year. Due to their commitment and that of our great sponsors, we've been able to compete at the highest levels and hang a lot of banners. I'm at a different point in my life now than I was back in 2010. My family has grown, my Cup Series team changed this year, and our son's racing schedule has become as demanding as my own. It is important for me to be able to spend more time with my family, my number 8 team at Richard Childress Racing. It'll be hard to walk away from this amazing facility that we built. I'll miss walking the shop floor, talking with our employees, hosting our fan days in the lobby, and spending countless hours there ensuring its success. However, I know at this point in my life and in my career that this is the correct decision." Well, as you said, Kyle is clearly in a different place. I hope he made the right decision, and I wish the team all the best. But the one question that I do have is, does this mean that Kyle is done with the Truck Series? Because this will make getting a ride in the Truck Series harder. Well, we will see. Now we move on to the 2024 schedule, because there were 2 announcements this week that I need to comment on. Because the day after Kyle Busch announced the sale, it was announced that the Brickyard 400 will be back at Indianapolis for 2024. Now, the race in question will be run in, I believe, July of 2024, and will be called the Brickyard 400 presented by PPG. And I'm going to get to this kind of sponsorship name in the next segment because it really annoys me. Now, obviously, if one race gets added, another race gets cut. That's been how it's been in NASCAR for years. I'll be interested to see what race gets cut from the schedule. I have a feeling I know one that may, but I want to see how this plays out. And around the same time, it was also announced that the All-Star race will be turning in North Wilkesboro for 2024. Now, the 2023 race was a smart move by NASCAR that garnered huge praise, and I think that this is a great move in the minds of many people, fans, teams, drivers, etc. And I'm looking forward to it. Now, this last story is one that I'm kind of shocked hasn't happened sooner. Now, we all know that despite the fact that racing does have a decent size audience, everyone knows that the NFL is the top professional sports league in America in terms of demographics. Nobody's going to argue that. They're the top professional football league in America too, but there exist other smaller leagues, whether they follow NFL rules or make up their own. 2 of these leagues were the XFL and the USFL. They had very small but dedicated audiences with decent TV deals. Well, Recently, to the utter shock of absolutely nobody, these two small leagues announced their intention to merge. So, on September 28th, both leagues jointly issued the following press release announcing their intention to merge. They're not actually merging as of yet, they're intending to merge. Just to clear that up. Quote, today, the United States Football League and the XFL announced their intention to merge. Subject to customary regulatory approvals, and if the transaction is consummated, the new league will establish best-in-class operations based on the most recent seasons of both leagues. This historic combination will anchor professional spring football with substantial capabilities and resources to ensure future growth and continue to enhance the development of the collective players, coaches, and staff that are coming together. More details regarding this new league will be announced at a later date. Now, as I said, they have small dedicated audiences, and it's been proven over the years that these minor league football teams, nobody really cares about them. Nobody really cares about spring football as much as they do about the NFL. But I'm going to throw out a multi-million-dollar idea that'll benefit everyone and is easy to do. Why not have this new league serve as an official minor league for the NFL? Think about this. This new league would be perfect for it. It could serve as a place for player development, and it would help establish a much bigger talent pool for teams, because the amount of players you can have on even the practice squad can be limited. But if you have an entire minor league team, you can have more talent available at a moment's notice, because we all know injuries are going to happen. Injuries are going to happen. Now, this new league, which I'm going to refer to as the USFXL, would benefit too, because now that you've got an actual minor league team with NFL implications, you honestly think that the fans of the NFL aren't going to tune in to watch? I mean, it's worked as the idea of a developmental league has worked for literally every other sport in the world, so why not the NFL? And I say this because it makes perfect sense, so it's probably not going to happen given the world that we live in. So, a little while ago, I mentioned my disdain for certain race naming sponsorships. We're going to get to that after the break. Welcome back. Before I continue, I just wanted to say that I forgot to mention this in the first segment. I really didn't want to re-record it, but you may notice some audio differences between this week's episode and last week's. I'm trying some new stuff with audio, so just bear with me. I'm trying to find out what works. Now, with that said, I want to discuss something that's been going on far too long in NASCAR. And granted, that could cover any multitude of things. But in this case, it's race sponsorships. And I get it. Money is tighter these days. Attendance and viewership are down. I get it. But I am so tired of races being labeled the X500 presented by Y or the A400 powered by B. I did a little work on J-Ski, and this has been around since at least 2000, probably earlier. I'm not going to spend more time researching this than I already have. But what I don't understand is why you have to call it that. You can't just call it the X/Y500. It has to be the X500 sponsored by Y. And I'm complaining about this because it keeps happening, and no matter who is sponsoring the race, it just sounds clunky. It sounds off. It doesn't sound or look good. Hell, it looks odd when two companies that either work with each other or even the same company are doing this. For example, there is the one example is the 2008 Camping World RV 400, which was presented by Coleman's, which was a Kansas race. The one of the worst sounding ones was the Banquet 400 presented by ConAgra Foods, and that lasted from 2003 to 2006 for 4 races. My favorite worst example of this was the 2008-2009 Coke Zero 400 powered by Coca-Cola. Just take a minute and let that marinate in your brain. I'll wait. Now, as I said, that would be bad when two companies that are related to each other in some way are bad, but where it really goes off the rails takes one of two forms. The first is when the two companies have no logical connection with each other. Like, yeah, the Camping World RV 400 presented by Coleman is kind of sounds stupid, but, you know, camping RVs and camping lanterns are a logical fit. You know, Banquet and Conagra, they're the same company. Banquet is a subsidiary of Conagra. But yeah, and as I'm saying, an item and a place that it is sold at or a place that it is used at is a logical connection, as is a product where a business is used. They're all logical connections here. Two companies with no logical connection between the two, they look and sound odd. And why do I say that? Well, here are the 4 most predominant examples I was able to find. The 2008 Camping World RV 400 presented by AAA, Dover. The 2012 Pocono 500 presented by #NASCAR. Is #NASCAR a company? The 2021 Jockey Made in America 250 presented by the 2021 Jockey Made in America 250 presented by Quick Trip, which was at Road America. Try saying that 3 times fast. And the most recent one, the 2023 Enjoy Illinois 300 presented by Ticket Smarter, which was a Gateway. I mean, those just sound stupid. But it gets worse because there's another variation of this that's been going around. It's a generic race name which is followed by presented by. You can't just call it the X500. It has to be the Y500 presented by X. And here are the 4 worst examples. The 2001 Pennsylvania 500 presented by Pep Boys, which was at Pocono. The 2006 Neighborhood Excellence presented by Bank of America, that was at Dover. The 2012 Capital City 400 presented by Virginia's for Lovers at Richmond. And the 2013 Party in the Poconos 400, which was presented by Walmart. Was there any reason for any of these? You couldn't just have the name and the distance as opposed to the name and the distance presented by X. What advantage does this style of race naming have? It looks, feels, and sounds clunky. The announcers clearly hate saying this, and I'm willing to bet many cars, sponsors, and teams and drivers feel the same way. So let's take the Party in the Poconos 400 presented by Walmart. Answer me this question. Why wouldn't the Walmart Party in the Poconos 400, why wouldn't that work? Why wouldn't the Virginia is for Lovers Capital City 400 work? Why wouldn't the Bank of America Neighborhood Excellence 400 work? Why wouldn't the Pep Boys Pennsylvania 500 work? They all sound so much better. They feel so much better. They look better on tickets. They look better on shirts. They look better on programs. They look better everywhere. And again, if this was like a fad that had gone on for a few years and then faded out of existence, I wouldn't be talking about it right now. But even in 2023, we're still putting up with this horse shit. The 2023 race at Atlanta was the 2023 Quaker State 400 available at Walmart, which I'll give them credit for that. The available part does sound better than presented by or powered by. And again, this is not a minor issue. Since 2000, there have been 47 different races with this sponsorship nonsense, and that's just in the Cup Series. I didn't bother doing the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, or the IndyCar Series, as I would rather inject myself with liquid plutonium to try to do that research. It's annoying, It's aggravating. It's an ongoing problem that has zero end in sight. And no matter what, I hope it ends, but I also know it never will. After the break, some WWE news. Welcome back. Normally, when it comes to wrestling on this podcast, I discuss AEW and the lovely train wreck that they are, and I do have a few stories I'm going to save for later. But this week I'm going to discuss WWE, because if you've not been paying attention, WWE has officially merged with Endeavor Group Holdings. Endeavor Group Holdings, Inc., which is a holding company that has a number of IPs, including UFC, and with this merger came some releases both behind the scenes and in front of the camera. A number of superstars were released, and I'm going to group these into 4 categories. Now, the first is wrestlers who were actively being used on mainstream television prior to release, and this may include the main roster or NXT. The 3 that were being used that got released were Mustafa Ali, Dana Brooke, and Dabba-Kato / Commander Aziz. They were being some were on the main roster that WWE wasn't really using much, if at all, prior to their release. 11, and this is just within the last year. Now these wrestlers are Dolph Ziggler, Shelton Benjamin, Elias Emmo, Riddick Moss, Aaliyah, Top Dollar, Rick Boogs, Mace, Mansoor, and Shanky. Now, speaking objectively, I think the worst 2 firings were Ziggler and Benjamin. They're both well-established and proven talents, and they could have been used in putting over the new talent. The rest of them, Elias, Riddick Moss, Rick Boogs, Mace, Shanky, and Mace, Mansoor, Shanky, and Emma, and Aaliyah weren't really being utilized, and they were more taking a payroll than doing anything else. Now, I'm a casual fan. I'm not living my entire life on wrestling Twitter, so this group, I haven't heard of most of these people. Ikemen Jiro, and I apologize if I butcher these names, Yulisa Leon, Quincy Elliott, Bryson Montana, Kevin Ventura Cortez, Daniel MacArthur, Alexis Gray, Brooklyn Barrow, and I apologize for this one, I know I'm going to mispronounce this, Abdi Fitzgerald. Now, the 4th category is a guy by the name of Matthew Riddle. He's in a category all by himself because he is a train wreck. I think Matt Riddle is responsible for more backstage and PR problems for WWE in the last 10 years, with the exceptions of Vince McMahon or Enzo Amore. And his issues start back in 2013, long before he was with WWE, because from 2008 to 2013, Riddle was a fighter in the UFC. He had a 7-3 record with 2 no contests. On October 20th, 2012, it was announced that Riddle had failed his first drug test, a post-fight drug screening for marijuana. He was fined and suspended for 30 days, and then on February 26, 2013, Riddle revealed he had tested positive for marijuana again, and since this was his second failed drug test within a year, he was subsequently released from the USC. I recently watched a video on Dana White commenting about Riddle, and he was making $162,000 and he had to work for he worked like 3 times a year. He was fighting in the prelims on pay-per-views. I'm going to just throw a couple of these quotes out there. You have to really see the whole rant. I can't do it justice here. Quote, "The reason he's not in the UFC anymore is because he could not pass a drug test. You're so weak-minded and addicted to marijuana you couldn't stay off it long enough to pass a drugs test 3 times a year? Well, guess what, dummy? They test in the real world, too. You think you can't pass one 3 times a year? I want to know where this rocket scientist is going to make 6 figures a year." Well, we found out, didn't we? And this quote, This just encompasses who this dipshit is. Quote, this is the guy, Matt Riddle, who did an interview and said, I smoke marijuana so I don't beat my wife and children. I had to look this up because I wanted to see if this was true. Oh my God. This might be one of the most cringe things I've ever read. Outside of the Zion baseball thing, this might be one of the most cringy things I've ever read. Because after his first suspension, he did an interview with something called the Verbal Submission on MMA Mania, where he said the following. And if you have a rescue inhaler, you might want to get it out for this one. Quote, I've been smoking weed since I was 13, and look at me. I'm in the UFC. I smash people with a smile on my face. It's not a performance-enhancing drug. It makes me relax. It makes me happy. Honestly, it probably keeps me from beating my 3 kids because they're always screaming and cry at me. And my wife's crazy, and you know what life's like. It's hard sometimes, and honestly, I like to go to my game room and rip a tube and just sit back and relax and enjoy a 20-minute show. Go out, see my family, take care of everything that I have to take care of, and that's what I do. A lot of people think it's okay to drink a fifth of Jack and beat their wife. I don't. I'm going to give you a few seconds to let that quote just sink in. Just think about that. Okay. In what part of his brain? Now, we know he's not a genius. That's patently obvious. But in what part of your brain did you think it was a good idea to say something like that in public? In public. I don't care if he was joking or not. This lack of self-awareness having motherfucker does a public interview where he says, yeah, I smoke weed because it prevents me from beating my wife and kids. Who would hire you after you say that? Well, we found out. So, after being released from UFC and trying and failing spectacularly to keep his MMA career going, he wrestled for the Indies for 4 years and then signed with WWE in 2008. Now, he quickly brought his stoner persona with him, and he also brought his personal problems. While he's with WWE, be it NXT or the main roster, he was always in the news for backstage issues. These issues include backstage problems with Goldberg, Brock Lesnar, Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns, amongst others, which was from pretty much his entire WWE career. Somebody by the name of Candy Cartwright filed a sexual harassment lawsuit in June of 2020, though that was ultimately dropped. In December of 2022, after failing a drug test, and I should mention WWE does not test for marijuana, he was sent to rehab. During his time in rehab, he put out a photo talking about how he's setting boundaries and he's saying no to himself, which would be okay if he didn't look like he had just shot up 5 minutes before the photograph. Look it up, see if I'm kidding. He left one porn star for another during this rehab stint. And the most recent one, and I'm not going to go through all of them because I simply don't have the time to research all this. He was reportedly intoxicated to JFK Airport. He got into an altercation with a police officer and then posted the guy's picture on his Instagram claiming he was, and I'm quoting, sexually assaulted. And while he had a somewhat decent run as a singles competitor, his main use in WWE, both NXT and the main roster, was in odd man tag teams with Butch, Timothy Thatcher, Drew McIntyre, and Randy Orton. He actually did better with that than running as a single. Well, question now becomes, how did he last as long with WWE because of his personal problems? Well, it's simple. He was popular, I don't know why, and he moved merch. That's the only reason he lasted as long as he did. He was bringing WWE a lot of money, so he got away with more. Happened with Enzo Amore, and it happened with Matt Riddle. Frankly, when you're working, that's just how it is sometimes. Every business's goal at the end of the day is to generate revenue. And the most hardest working and the most revenue generating person can get away with a little more. I mean, if you're a boss in a company and the hardest working and most revenue generating man in your department says, "Hey boss, could you give me a few extra days off because I've got to take care of something?" Yeah, you've made the company more than enough money. I would be more than willing to do that. But that's just the way the corporate world works. Now, where did his downfall start? Well, as I said, WWE is coming off a merger. The old WWE was pretty much run entirely by Vince McMahon, whereas Endeavor Group Holdings Inc. is a more professionally run company. And I can tell you, they have little room for bullshit. And Matt Riddle has proven himself to be a bullshit factory. He has been given more chances than they would have given most everyone else on the roster, and that's covering the last 10 years. Do you think Riddick Moss or Elias would be able to get away with a quarter of the issues that Matt Riddle was responsible for? Do you honestly think do you think that Rick Boogs would have been able to fail as many drug tests as he did and still stay with the company? No. And there's a very simple reason why. None of these guys were the draw that Matt Riddle was. Now, the moment the merger happened and went into effect, Matt Riddle went from asset to liability very rapidly. The new company overlooked Matt Riddle's drawing power and saw him for the toxic person he is both in and out of the locker room and behind the scenes, and they justifiably got rid of him. In this day and age, companies will get rid of liabilities very quickly. If you become a liability for your company, they will get rid of you at the first opportunity. No apologies, nothing. But having looked at this guy for what he is, I'm firmly in belief that Matt Riddle will never get any better. Never. I've had my personal struggles with mental health, and I've had addiction issues in my family. I've had people in my life who were able to tell me when I was making mistakes. Riddle doesn't have these people, or if he does, he ignores them. Or if he does have them and he talks to them, they're too scared to confront. He's too scared to confront them. I don't think he's in denial. He's not in denial. That's patently obvious. He sees nothing wrong with what he does. And he seems almost hell-bent on continuing his own self-destruction. Some people in life end up in the situation they do through no fault of their own. You're a good person, you do everything right, and you get cancer, or you get hit by a car, or you have an accident at work and you're injured. Matt Riddle is the perfect example of you are your own worst enemy. He has cost himself 2 high-profile, high-paying jobs because he couldn't accept the rules about marijuana. And before anyone else says, "Oh, pot should be legal and it is in many places in this country," that's not the issue. Every job that I have ever worked at has made it very clear that you cannot show up under the influence of anything. If you come into my job with alcohol in your breath, you're done. If you show up and you're obviously under the influence of marijuana, goodbye. Every job I've ever had, even mom and pop places, have made it clear as crystal that you can't show up drunk or high. And sometimes you have to give up what you want to do because of what you have to do. I mean, I work retail. He was working at UFC, and again, he only had to focus 3 times a year to make $162,000. He couldn't stay off marijuana 3 times a year. What does that tell you? And you know what? Matt Riddle has done more harm to himself, his family, and his career than the other 8 billion people on the face of this planet combined. He is his own worst enemy. And I know that Matt Riddle's popular and blah blah blah. Well, guess what? WWE is now a better place without Matt Riddle, as is Endeavor Group Holdings. Where Riddle will end up is questionable, but I hope beyond hope that this company can handle bad PR, because he's going to generate it and you're going to have to deal with it. Now, an interesting wrinkle came into the WWE firing story a few days later because, like I said, a few days later after WWE released all of those superstars, it was announced that they had signed former AEW TBS champion Jade Cargill for a deal, and she was working at the Performance Center. It raised some eyebrows and upset a few fans, but I think it's a great move. Because of AEW, Jade Cargill is a well-known name in wrestling now, and clearly, the Performance Center sees something in her, and sees something there. I mean, yeah, she's a little rough around the edges, but they clearly think this is a good investment. That's how business works. No matter what you're investing in, whether it be stocks, bonds, baseball cards, infrastructures, whatever, you want a return on your investment. That's just how investing works. Sometimes in life, you've got to get rid of 21 mediocre to awful bad investments and make some better ones. I think that she might be good long term. And I'm recording this before the pay-per-view because I got some stuff I got to work on. But I'm interested to see the NXT pay-per-view if she's going to make an appearance. Because I absolutely think that putting the title on Tiffany Stratton and then having her face Jade Cargill would be a smart move. I definitely see an NXT Women's Championship title in her future, but we'll get to that when we get there. Speaking of getting there, we get to the end of episode 90 of Driver Suit Blog Radio. I will see you next week with episode 91. I'm Dave Farson. Leave the like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next week.